right, what's up? Good morning, PT on Ice Daily Show. Great to see everybody. Dr. Jeff Moore here, currently serving as the CEO of ICE, lead faculty for both the cervical and lumbar spine divisions. Great to see everybody. I am coming at you live from our hotel room up in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. Got some good snow up here last night, so we buzzed up here late last night, brought the family up into the mountains, crashed up here, and we're going to hit the slopes here in just about an hour or two. So I hope everybody had an awesome Christmas. So cool to see so many of you logging on right now. So happy holidays from my family to yours. So let's jump in. I have a lot to share today. So first of all, it's Thursday, which means that it's Gut Check Thursday. So let's start there. Saw that Alan already posted it. So we are doing a 10-minute max distance row. Okay, so just rowing as far as you can in 10 minutes. Part of the reason we're doing that, number one, it's a wonderful test. Really nice kind of blend of somewhere on the border there of anaerobic and aerobic metabolism, getting a good solid push in. I'm trying to hold steady for 10 minutes or maybe breaking it up into a few smaller chunks and taking a breather, but try to push that hard. I rode an hour the other day on Christmas Eve, and that was really a challenge. So I'm looking forward to having a smaller push over the next couple of days with this. But the big reason we're doing it is if you don't know about Julie Foucher's Christmas Row, I hope you have a chance to check that out. You can actually go to christmasmarathonrow.com. So Julie Foucher, her family has been rowing a marathon every Christmas, I think for 6 or 7 years. And it's so cool. They raise funds for a charity as they do so. And we all get to kind of jump on that bandwagon and follow her lead. So if you go to christmasmarathonrow.com, you will see that. And we have an ICE Physio team. So we are hoping that many of you can join up with that and add your row kilometers onto ours. We already have quite a few of them logged, but really excited to chip in with Julie in row. It's for Barbell for Boobs this year. So talking about breast cancer and bringing awareness and hoping to be of use in that space. So if you have a chance to hop on a rower, maybe hashtag Xmas Row, join Julie in that effort, join all of us. Pretty cool thing going on over the holiday season. As far as courses coming up before we jump in, there are a million of them. So ICE Physio, I think we have the majority of our online courses all starting in the first 2 weeks of next year. So between January 1st and the 14th, we have modern management of the older adult, we have telehealth, we have our out-of-network step-by-step, all 3 CMFA online courses, so essential foundations, advanced concepts, pregnancy and postpartum. As far as live courses, I'll be in Orlando, January 25 and 26 on the last weekend of January. And that's actually the last course that I have open seats for, I think until April or May. I saw the one in March in Greensboro sold out. So if you want to join me at one of my courses, cervical or lumbar, that is the only option. It's the cervical spine class until much further into the year. That's at the end of January. My buddy Steve's clinic down in Orlando. All right. So what I want to talk about today on Leadership Thursday, because I've been asked about it a handful of times, but recently on Twitter, I was directly asked about it. So I spent some time really actually sitting down and thinking about it. And that is, what books have really guided my thinking, leadership, vision over the years? What books have been foundational in that? And I tell you, that is a hard question. Like trying to disseminate that list down to only a handful is a big ask. But for me, I think there's really one, and then there's a handful of other smaller contributors. So I want to spend time on that one, and then I will mention a couple others for those who are kind of looking at in the new year, stocking up their library and learning a bit. Hey, good morning, Kelsey. Sorry, I didn't see that. The one I want to talk about is Let My People Go Surfing. So I've recommended this to a handful of you individually, but I would say the number one book that has guided kind of my thinking on organizational development, vision, and leadership is that book by Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia, called Let My People Go Surfing. And I'll tell you a few reasons that it really has stuck with me. This book was written over 10 years ago, and I remember reading it and really thinking, if I ever get a chance to have any sort of authority inside of an organization or have the blessing to guide other people inside of that company, I am never going to forget this book. And a lot of these principles are going to be a big part of what guides my daily actions. And one of the things I love was how well he illustrated the absolute lack of compromise for quality. So there's a million examples in the book, but I think my favorite one was very early on when he was beginning to build equipment for climbers, right? So he was an avid climber, right? Really spending his summers living out of his car, parked in these national parks, climbing these mountains that he has a profound respect for. And I remember this story that when he started selling his equipment early on to climbers, what he would do is basically build or forge these prototypes, and then he would give it to the best climbers that were in his circle, and he would say, go beat the daylights out of this. Like, just go climb like there's no tomorrow and come back and tell me everything that's wrong with it, everything that's imperfect. And that's the kind of hunt for quality that I can really get behind. Like, go out there, use the heck out of this, and come back and tell me why it's not good enough yet, right? And then using that feedback to go back to the shop, to change the equipment, to come back to the drawing board and say, is it there yet? And just having that egoless drive to create something that is dramatically better than everything else in the market. Like, I'll never forget reading that paragraph and really thinking that it spoke to something very deep inside of me. So that was one huge takeaway. Another one that I love that I think is really relevant, especially in today's society or in today's market, maybe dynamics, if you will, is this reluctance factor, right? So Yvon Chouinard will speak about, I think that the actual book title or cover says A Reluctant Businessman, right? He didn't want to do this, right? He was an avid climber, loving what he was doing, making equipment largely for himself and his buddies. Like, he wasn't trying to go into business. It was just that he was doing something so well that the opportunity in business wouldn't get out of his way, right? And so I love that idea of being a reluctance business person. I think, nowadays you've got folks who are trying to find a way to make money and trying to be proactive about going into it, and that's fine. I can appreciate that too. But there's something particularly romantic about someone who's almost trying not to do something, but the stars just keep aligning and finally realizing that you have to accept your calling. So I think there's a lot of authenticity in people who are like, well, I'm not sure, I really love what I'm doing. I'm not sure if that's right for me. And then having it keep coming back and keep coming back until it's like, you know what, I get it. Like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is my calling. I'm going to accept that charge. I just think there's a lot of beauty and a lot of authenticity in that idea of reluctance and waiting until you're absolutely sure that that's your calling because you love what you were also doing currently. You weren't looking for something. It's almost coming to you and you're meeting that calling. I thought that was a really neat part of his overall story. Probably the most famous thing Patagonia has done, and we have to mention it as one of the bullet points that draws you towards this book and this company, is Yvon initiating the 1% for the Planet initiative. So that was back in 85. So that was a long time ago that they donate 1% of gross sales, not net profit, gross sales to taking care of the planet, to saving the planet. Good morning, Colin. That is an unbelievable notion or willingness to step out and tell your company that we are going to donate 1% of our gross to saving the planet. I mean, you want to talk about leading from the front or being about it. I can't think of a more massive gesture than something like that at such scale. For those of you who are running companies, you know what taking money off your gross line, it's one thing to take it off of your net line, but to take it off of your gross profit and say, look, we have to organize our own expenses. That's on us. Whatever money we bring into this company, 1% of that is going to take care of this planet that we love so much. Like, again, I think just the authenticity that comes from a willingness to do something like that really moves you. And certainly, I'm sure for those who are following him, deepened that drive towards followership. The last one, and maybe the one the book was written the most to address, and certainly one that resonates with me, is this lack of micromanaging. Right, so I'm not sure how much you all know about the origins of the story, but one of the reasons the book is called "Let My People Go Surfing" is that his leadership style was very much one of almost an anti-micromanagement, or maybe you could say a strength of empowerment. But it was very much wear whatever you want, wear shoes, don't wear shoes, right? Wear whatever gear you're comfortable being in here in that you can deliver your absolute best work. If you're feeling stressed, you don't have to ask me. Go out and catch a surf, right? Get out in the water for an hour. Do whatever you've got to do. You're adults, right? You love this stuff as much as I do. Do whatever you have to do so that you can care the most and deliver the best. I don't care how you do it. I just want excellence. We're all in the same boat. So I think that idea of allowing people to behave in any way they want to behave because you know that they are as driven to create the best product that ever existed as you are, means you don't have to govern their behavior in any reasonable way. All you have to do is get them resources. And I think it is for any of you who are in a leadership position or moving towards one, I think if one day you can appreciate that if you get the right people on board, really the only thing you have to do is get them the resources they need along the way. That's really your only job. And if you can embrace that you brought on people that were so smart and so driven and so motivated, if anything, you're going to be the one who's learning as they work, right? You don't need to be in a teaching role very often. You're really in more of a resource role. Right? How can I organize things so that your talent can be showcased? How can I get things to you that can allow you to refine our product? And once you begin to realize that's what it's all about, number one, you've hired the right people. And number two, I think you've taken on that servant leadership mentality that leads to companies that are special. And I think this idea of like, dude, I don't care what you wear, right? It doesn't matter if you wear shoes to work. I love when he says that in the book. Like those things don't matter. What matters is the product perfect? Is the product something that we are all as proud of as we were on day one? Like, did you do that? That matters a lot, right? Everything else we don't need to worry about so that we can worry 100% about that. So I feel like when I read that, the idea of like, I want to work for this person was so strong inside of me. Like all this person cares about is that we do the right thing at the highest level humanly possible. And don't worry about the small things that allow you to get there. So that book, for those who haven't read Let My People Go Surfing by Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia, I think that it would be, I hope for many of you, a really transformative read and a deeply inspiring story. Okay, so I can't leave you with just one book. So you can imagine I had a whole list as I was going through this. There are a couple others I just want to touch on. And one of those is Start With Why. Because none of these are newer than 10 years, but that one's pretty close. But Start With Why really did an amazing job of helping us realize that some companies are different in a very fundamental way. And by different, I mean better, right? In the example, and this was more timely back when the book was written, the example that Simon Sinek uses was Apple Computer, right? That there was a very different why that was driving Apple Computer, right? That there was a bigger philosophy behind the making of this hardware. It wasn't about the how, it was about the why, right? And as he speaks about companies that understood the why, companies where all of the individuals in the company, not just the leadership, but the entire brigade bought into the why and didn't worry nearly as much about the how, right? And so all of the marketing, all of the culture, all of the stories were about the why, right? What was going to be changed fundamentally, philosophically in our society because you were doing what you were doing, right? The why. If that is the primary driver, the strength of that organization, the cultural power of that organization is light years ahead of any company that focuses on the how. So I know that when I read that book, this was kind of good timing for me because I read it kind of right around when ICE was kind of forming. And I remember thinking a ton about, do we know our why? Does everybody know our why? Most importantly, and here's what I want you to take away from this section of the talk, is that I can fairly say that all of the individuals that we have brought into the sort of the ICE fold over the years have been brought in because we believe they understood the why of the company, the foundational things that we were trying to change, the philosophical, the spiritual, the things that really mattered on a deeper level. They understood those things. We did not go out and recruit people that we thought could execute from a logistic fashion, that had a good how. Hey, we can make more money if we blank. Not very appealing. Hey, I want to be a part of the company because of blank. Very appealing. Two completely different employees, two completely different coworkers. If you can embrace that you can find your best individuals by hunting inside of them and picking apart how well they know their why, you're going to realize it's much, much easier to hire because the overall amount of folks who know their why in the overall market is extraordinarily low, right? And the amount of folks who know their why, whose why syncs up with your why, is even smaller. So if anybody thinks that they're trying to select their next hire out of a large group of people, I would argue doesn't understand this filtering process and isn't driving their company on a why, they're driving it on a how. Because if you're driving on a why, the amount of people that resonate with your why is very low. The amount of people that know their why well enough to know that is even lower. So it makes grabbing people for your company, knowing who to go after, knowing who to extend that offer to, extraordinarily easy, because once you have that filtering process, there's only a couple of them. So I give that some real thought. I mean, by all means, be fascinated by the book in general. It's a great concept, but realize that the idea of knowing your why and not just your how is every bit as important for individuals as it is for companies. So when you're looking for individuals, that can be a huge part of your filtering process. So I think there's a lot of stuff to take from that text that articulates it in a way that while all of us felt this in our guts, it was really put together in a clear fashion that allows us to hunt down those people and build our company in a way that deepens our culture, not dilutes it. Which, for those of you who are in leadership, you know how absolutely critical that is. Hey, Nick, yeah, man, looking forward to PMT on Ice. Can't wait for Phoenix, man. That's going to be a blast coming up in 2 weeks. All right, number 3. Now we're going to get a little bit off. Those two are foundational, and they make sense, right? It's a very clear correlation and connection on how that helps you kind of drive your company or build your vision. The other 2 I just want to note before I hop off the call is that are a little bit different and more abstract, but no less meaningful to me on decisions that we've made in ways that sort of my navigational buoys have been drawn. And one of those is The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. So a very old book, right, written in the early 1900s about the meatpacking industry in Chicago. But The Jungle, number 1, just had a really deep emotional impact on me. I think because I was at the right age when I read it. And maybe some of you are past that, maybe some of you aren't. But The Jungle, for those of you who don't know the story, is about an individual who goes through the meatpacking plants in Chicago and has a really interesting ride where he's very taken advantage of in his formative, hardworking years. So when he's really robust and powerful and physically strong, the company really utilizes that to their advantage and not his. I'm not going to give you the whole story, but I will say that that book stopped me in my tracks and made me realize that you need to understand the value of your work. Right? And it's critically important to connect with people who have your long game in their best interest, because that's the opposite of what happened in the book. In the book, nobody had this immigrant's long game in their best interest. They only had their short-term financial gain in their best interest. And what wound up happening was this guy was chewed up and spit out of the industry. It's a horribly depressing book, right, for anybody who wants to go read it. But it really made me say that, you got to work hard. There's no question about that. I don't think anything else has ever been uttered on this podcast. You've got to work hard, but you also are allowed to expect quite a bit in both the short and long term as far as benefits for your hard work. That's not wrong, right? It's not wrong when you're working your butt off to expect that people appreciate that, both from the 30,000-foot view and figuratively, as well as in brass tacks from a payment perspective and from a move up the ladder perspective, right? You need to work hard. But you also need to expect a lot for that. Even more importantly, when the day comes that you are benefiting from somebody's hard work, you need to give much. You need to give much, right? Both of these things are so important. I think most of you are going to encounter both of them in your career. There's going to be times when you are doing a lot of work and someone's benefiting quite a bit, arguably a bit more than you are during that phase. But if it's the right person, right, while they are benefiting, they are also moving you very logistically into a position where you're going to be able to do the same thing next, right? You're going to be able to benefit on the next person that you are coaching up. But the key there is that when that shifts and all of a sudden you are now benefiting off of somebody else, and there's no other real way to voice that you are aware of that you acknowledge that, and that you take care of that person, right? That you look out for their career, that you put yourself out there. And so I think on both sides, that book, by showing how much that kind of relationship can be abused, if you're willing to read it, it makes you more protective about the work that you're doing and making sure that people you're doing it for have your best interest in mind. And boy, I'll tell you, it makes it that when you have someone's interest that you're taking care of, that you put a lot of stock, a lot of emotion, and a lot of energy into making sure that they benefit in the long term because you're benefiting in the short term. I think that book had a really profound influence on almost on a daily or weekly basis on the way that I behave in my work. So I wanted to mention that one. And the last one is On the Road. It's unfair of me not to mention that book. That one's been talked about in pretty much every circle, but I think that everybody kind of has their spirit book, their book that when they read it, they're like, oh, this has got to be a part of my life. Like this way of living, this philosophy. For me and for millions of people, that book was On the Road by Jack Kerouac. Kind of this idea of, traveling around the country and meeting interesting people and really just being kind of on that quest of exploring. And I think when I read that, I knew that myself and my family were going to be open to traveling probably more than the average crew. Hilariously, I'm sitting here in Steamboat Springs in the morning in this hotel room because we traveled up here to hit some skiing. But I think that knowing who you are and finding that book that resonates with you so deeply, and while you're reading it, making sure you acknowledge the fact that you feel that way and saying that my life should look something like this, right? This should be a key component. You've got to have your spirit book, right? That in knowing that book should guide how you position yourself in your career, should guide how you position those around you. And I think it should be brought up to other people. What book is that for you? I mean, I think more than knocking out StrengthsFinder or, I'm sorry, Alan, Enneagram or any of these formalized tests, I think asking people, what book really resonated with them in that way that they knew while they were reading it, their life had to look different. I think knowing what that book is can probably help you guide that person as much as anything else. Right? For me, that book was On the Road. You're going to have yours. I would love to hear it. By all means, shoot me a reply here. That'd be awesome if a lot of you jumped in. So team, those are 4 books for very different reasons. Yvon Chouinard's Let My People Go Surfing, Simon Sinek's Start With Why, Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, and Jack Kerouac's On the Road. For those of you who asked me, I hope that answer does some justice. Very different reasons, those all shape my behavior, but in a very foundational way, those all shape my behavior. So for what it's worth, those are them. I would really love to hear yours if anybody wants to respond. Other than that, have a great rest of your Christmas holiday. I'm sure a lot of you are off. I'm thrilled so many of you were able to join me here this morning. Hope to hear about some books. Hope to see you in either the online classes or down in Orlando with me here in a few weeks or at PMT on Ice down in Phoenix. And certainly hope to see your numbers as you pull that rower for 10 minutes at Ice Physio, #IceTrain, #GutCheckThursday. Cheers, everybody. Get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.